Aloha, everyone. Welcome to module number 7. This is chapter 12, talking about interpersonal conflict. I'll try to make it shorter, and I'll try to move along quickly today. Um, I'm going to go over some of the things, as usual, the 10 terms that you might want to talk about in your discussion forum or your video for that matter. They're bolded and there's an asterisk next to them, but I'll go through them just to we have an idea, of where kind of all of this is at. So the nature of conflict. Um, Conflict defined, but we should look through this. A lot of times we have conflict every day almost, right? Whether it's internal, external, expressed or not expressed, we don't really think about what it is. So we have struggle. One of the things here you want to think about is a lot of the times maybe you think there's conflict. So an example is driving. You're on the freeway and you're driving, and maybe someone cuts you off and you think, oh, we're going to have a battle now. It's conflict. We're going to get angry about it. There's something going on. And right when you get angry, that person exits the freeway. Was there a conflict? And a lot of times in class, we'd have a discussion about this, and students say, yes, there's a conflict with my neighbor upstairs because they're smoking or whatever. And then come to find out, maybe your neighbor upstairs is deaf and they couldn't hear you complaining. Was there a conflict? So really, if you think about it, according to interpersonal communication, at least, there isn't a conflict if both of you aren't expressing that. So there's only a conflict with one side. Think about it. The other person has no idea, is there a conflict? Usually it's over our goals or resources, or we want to be independent. Okay. It's a natural. This is major. This is one of the terms that you need to know. I think a lot of times, especially when you're younger, you think, oh, I met, the person of my dreams, or whenever you're a teenager in your 20s, and you think, oh, everything's perfect. We never argue. We never fight. And I think when you tell the kapuna that, they raise an eyebrow and go, okay, let's see how long that lasts. Because I think like according to the book, it is natural and it's beneficial. But this is one of the things you can talk about. Think of the conflicts you've had with someone close to you. Could be a spouse, could be a sibling, a child, someone at work even. And then was it beneficial in the end? Of course, sometimes it's not, right? But it is natural. Conflict styles. We all have different styles, obviously. Think about yourself and someone close to you. Again, it could be a parent, could be anyone. Think about people that maybe you work with or you're in class with. And you can look at this chart, read, again, always read the chapter. I think a lot of you are finding the chapters are really interesting when you start to apply yourself to it. But for the sake of me not talking too much, let me just hit a couple of the really interesting ones here. Let me disappear here for a second. Okay, so if we look at this, it looks kind of like the Johari window from a few chapters back, but it's not. It's about conflict styles. And again, these are all just theories, but they kind of make sense, yeah? Again, look through all of these. They make sense, but let me kind of hit on two of the main ones here. One is avoiding. A lot of this is also based on culture and gender, which we'll get to, which is another term. But think about times when you avoid a conflict. Maybe you're just too tired. Maybe something, you got something from Amazon recently. It doesn't work. It's been a month or two. You try to return it. You can't. And you just go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to eat the $20. I don't want to deal with the conflict. Or you go to Safeway or McDonald's. They don't give you the large fries. You just avoid it, right? Um, Again, there's no judgment here, good or bad, but this is a style and it may be appropriate. It may not be all the time, right? There are different styles. Accommodating is I just give in. Competing, here's one you really want to think about. A lot of us do this. I think this is part of human nature again. Conflict is natural and we want to win. We want that resource. The problem could be, according to the chapter, a lot of research could be when you're competing, especially with those you love. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, back to the pillow method. But when you start throwing in these other things when you compete, right? Direct aggression or passive aggressive, those comments, right? The ambushing, those things we learned about listening, that makes things more difficult. Again, sometimes between countries, I guess you need to compete, right? Compromising, collaborating, you can kind of look into those a little more. That might be your style as well. Collaborating, I think is really the hardest one. We're not really trained to do that. No bold here, so we'll fly through it. Just think about what style you use, right? And of course, everyone's going to say, well, I think generally I'm like this, like a Myers-Briggs test, but sometimes we're introverted, sometimes we're extroverted, right? So consider these factors. It's going to change, right? Communication evolves. We adapt according to the situation. So look, the relationship, the situation, the other person, your goals. You may avoid it if it's in traffic. You may be competing if it's at work, right? You may be accommodating if it's a child. So all of these things always change and they really matter. So when you're having conflict, think about it. What style would work best for me here? What style is most appropriate at the time? Or I just can't help it. I'm going to compete. That's okay too. Okay, I'm back. Again, these aren't bolded. So just for fun to kind of give you some context, and we're talking about conflict, especially in relationships. So it's again the way we handle conflicts. When you think about the person you're close to, again, it could be anything, right? It could be a spouse, it could be a parent, it could be a child. You look at these definitions, but basically, sometimes we have the same style, right? If we both tend to get angry really quick and compete, We're competing, and see how long that lasts. Sometimes it's the opposite. We'll both avoid, right? That means we have the same kind of style. Sometimes one of us will compete, one will avoid. One will compete, one will accommodate. Sometimes we're kind of like yin and yang, and we kind of accommodate, and it evolves. So that's all this is really about, is sometimes your styles for conflict don't really match up very well together. Sometimes they do. Most of the time, as most of you know, you got to work on it, right? I got to get rid of my picture again here for a second. Okay, so some bolded terms here. Again, just focus on the bolded terms, and then if you want to write about the specifics here, you can. So within a relationship, one thing you want to start looking for when we talk about conflict are the patterns, right? Like, how do you know when you're having a discussion that it becomes an argument, that becomes disagreeing and a fight, right? So here's what to look for. 1 is criticism. 2 is defensiveness. 3 is contempt. 4 is stonewalling. These kind of all make sense. Are you being criticized? Is it fair? Defensiveness is the other person getting defensive. Well, right? Contempt, this is when you want to think about, are you just getting the look? Are you getting the stink eye? Is there the stink eye in the tone, right? So just that contempt alone, just that feeling, that relational dimension of the communication, that contempt, I dislike you or it or whatever, that's a destructive conflict pattern. And of course, you folks learned in the last chapter, stonewalling, just avoiding it altogether, right? Conflict rituals, there's just a few in there, but think about the rituals. Sometimes we just start to sigh. Some people slam the door. Some people put the dishes down. Some people retreat. Some people say, give the look. We need to give a talk. But there's always something, isn't there, in that ritual when you know, folks, of what's going to happen. It could be someone sends an email and then someone doesn't reply for a day, a week, a year, if it's your family, right? So we have these rituals you could think about. What do? Do we end up crying at the end? Do we end up yelling at the end? What happens? These variables in conflict styles, this really matters. So these are bolded terms here. Really, 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 really think about how you learn to handle conflict. Some of it may be biological, a lot maybe from your parents, could be from society, and then how much of that is based on your self-concept, if you remember, in terms of gender and culture, right? Being a man of color or a woman of color or a trans person, of all these things matter when it comes to how you're going to deal with conflict. Are you expected to retreat? Are you expected to argue? Are you expected to not be the nail that sticks up? Are you expected to just say nothing because the person you're arguing with is an older generation? So all these things really matter. Okay. Just for fun here, one more bold one. When you're in conflict, okay, what can you do? So collaborative problem solving. Pay attention, read the chapter really carefully. The whole book, actually, because a lot of the times it says, sometimes silence is your best answer. Sometimes avoiding the conflict is the best solution. So again, when we talk about this stuff, it's not in this isn't math, right? So these are just tips. So how could you do? So one couple things you could do here: identify the problem and your unmet needs. So what's the problem here? Do you need to sleep longer? Do you need more money from your boss? Do you need more time to finish the assignment? What's the need? Make a date, right? Plan a time. Can we talk about it today? Can we talk about it tomorrow? Can we talk about when you're out of your meeting, right? Back to describe your problems and needs. Again, empathy, consider the other person, negotiate solution, and then follow up on the solution, right? And for work especially, this is a pro tip. For those jobs, when you go to the meetings, you're taking notes or someone else is taking notes, put down there an action item for yourself. Put an action item. Jeff will follow up on blah, 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 blah. And it's just good. Okay. Last one here, constructive conflict. Okay. And you read this, but again, think about it in your past when conflict was constructive. Win-win, is it too good to be true? Is it elaborate? Is it possible to change others? So when you go through this in this situation, maybe it's with your kids, win-win's possible. Sometimes it works. Sometimes, I don't know, in a court of law, it's not. So this is just something to think about. Okay. 9 minutes. Awesome, folks. Wow, only one module left. Please keep up the great work. It's just been a joy watching your flip grids. I had to get my video back on here. It's been a joy watching your flip grids. I'm learning so much. I hope you folks let me keep them. I know in an earlier video said I'm going to delete them, but now I'm thinking, you know what? When this term's over, if you want to delete them, go ahead. But if you wouldn't mind leaving it up there, some of the wisdom you folks are sharing is amazing, as well as discussion forum posts. I thank you so much for being you. I know in this asynchronous online world, it's not easy. I'm really amazed this particular semester how you folks are doing. So hang in there. Send me any tips. I'm teaching this class a lot, so if any way I can make it better, please do let me know, and I'm going to stop here before we hit 10 minutes. Okay, have a great week. Have a great module. I hope to see you in Zoom sometime. If not, just keep up the great work. Thank you.